Let me tell you something strange about silence in the age of noise. We live in a time where everyone is talking, but almost no one is listening. Where every thought becomes a post. Every feeling becomes content. And every human moment must be documented, or it feels like it never happened. But then there are the quiet ones. The ones who don't post. Who don't update. Who just disappear. They scroll silently. Observe deeply. And live quietly. Like shadows passing through a world obsessed with being seen. People misunderstand them. They call them antisocial, disconnected, maybe even sad. But the truth is, there's a whole different psychology behind that silence. It's not withdrawal. It's resistance. Because in a world where everyone is performing, the truest rebellion is to simply be real. See, we've been conditioned to think that visibility equals value. That if no one sees your life somehow matters less. But the quiet ones, they've already seen through the illusion. They know that the moment you perform happiness for validation, you stop feeling it for yourself. They know that constant posting turns real moments into rehearsed memories. They know that peace begins the second you stop living for witnesses. And that's what makes them powerful. Silence, you see, is not emptiness. It's ownership. It's the space where a person learns to belong fully to themselves again. Psychologists say people who don't constantly share online often have a stronger inner world. They process things differently, deeper, slower, more honestly. They don't rush to announce what they're feeling. They sit with it. They taste it. They let their thoughts mature before letting them go. And in doing that, they discover something rare. That not everything needs to be seen to be meaningful. Because when everything becomes public, privacy becomes sacred. And when every feeling is posted, silence becomes the truest form of expression. There's this quiet evolution that happens when you stop posting. At first, it feels strange, like disappearing. You start noticing how others keep showing up daily. And you almost feel like you're missing out. But then something shifts. The need for validation starts to fade. The noise starts to soften. And for the first time in years, you hear your own thoughts again. You stop thinking in captions. You stop planning moments for the camera. You start living them for you. Some people quit posting not because they ran out of things to say, but because they finally learned to listen. They got tired of performing happiness. Tired of explaining pain. Tired of existing in front of a crowd that applauds without understanding. So they leave, not with a dramatic announcement, but quietly, like smoke leaving a candle flame. And in that silence, something beautiful happens. They begin to heal. They begin to breathe without the pressure of being seen. They begin to feel without translating every emotion into content. That's not loneliness. That's rebirth. There's a concept in psychology called psychological ownership. It means something belongs to you not because you own it physically, but because it feels like a part of your identity. Your memories. Your emotions. Your thoughts. But when you post them, they stop being yours. They become public property. Open to judgment, interpretation, misunderstanding. So the quiet ones keep their moments close. Not to hide them, but to protect them. To keep the rawness of their truth unedited. Because they know that what is sacred must also be private. The irony is, the quiet ones are often the most alive. They feel everything. They notice everything. They are the ones who catch the soft flicker of light through the window. The tremble in someone's voice. The beauty in pauses. The poetry in imperfection. While the world is busy performing, they're simply being. And that's what scares people. Because silence mirrors them back to themselves. It exposes the noise they've been running from. You see, silence isn't a lack of words. It's the presence of meaning. It's where your inner voice becomes louder than the world's opinion. It's where real confidence grows. The kind that doesn't need applause to exist. The people who embrace solitude aren't avoiding connection. They're rejecting artificial connection. They'd rather sit with one real thought than scroll through 100 empty ones. And that's a kind of intelligence this generation rarely understands. There's something deeply human about stepping away from the digital circus. To reclaim your attention. To taste boredom again. To walk without recording it. To feel without framing it. When you stop broadcasting, you start observing. When you stop reacting, you start understanding. When you stop performing, you start living. And that's when the noise finally fades. And you realize how little of it ever mattered. The quiet ones often carry wisdom that comes from observation. They've seen enough to know that attention doesn't equal love. And applause doesn't equal truth. They understand that most people are addicted to being seen. Because they're terrified of being forgotten. But here's the paradox. The more you chase visibility, the more invisible you actually become. Because your identity gets lost in the crowd's reflection. But the ones who choose silence, they're remembered differently. Not because they shouted the loudest, but because their presence felt real. And if you've ever taken that step back, if you've ever deleted the app, ignored the urge to post, or just sat quietly with your thoughts instead of sharing them, then you already know this truth. The world doesn't need to see your growth for it to be real. Your peace doesn't need proof. Your evolution doesn't need an audience. In fact, the most powerful transformations happen in private. Unseen, unfiltered, and unshared. Because some of the most sacred things in life aren't meant to be performed. They're meant to be lived. So the next time you see someone who's gone quiet, don't assume they've disappeared. They might have just arrived. In their truest form. They might be busy feeling instead of posting. Healing instead of proving. Learning instead of performing. And maybe, just maybe, they've realized something the rest of us forgot. That some things become more beautiful the moment you stop trying to prove them. Because real life, the kind that changes you, the kind that humbles you, the kind that gives you peace, doesn't need an audience. It just needs you.